I don't have a definitive answer right now.
Okay.
I just got the list from Jamie this afternoon.
These were code and zoning bills, correct?
Code and zoning,
Okay.
yes.
Alrighty, so we'll have to keep that on.
So since I was the one that asked to get this on the agenda, I'd like to say that the zoning and code, when I looked at, if I'm reading it correctly, the zoning and code revenue, profit, part of Mr. Palermo's report for last year, as we made a total revenue of $24,969.95 in revenue for code, for permits and such. Now, the total cost as of last year, when it ended in the profit and loss, was $21,295.05. We paid in August of this year $9,169.42 of last year's bills towards zoning and code, and now we have an outstanding $61,566.42. I don't know how the numbers are coming up. I also, and I know that we had Linda Roach in-house doing it for at least part of the year. I just don't understand how the bills are so much higher than the revenue. I don't understand it. I could be reading things wrong, but I also noticed in the January through June of this year, professional services, code services, UCC, code enforcement, contracted services, $142.50. As of June of this year, that's all we paid him. So we must owe a lot of bills for this year as well. I mean, this budget versus actual, as of June, only showed we paid him $142 this year, as of the end of June. We must be sitting on some bills. Now, I know today there's 3,715 dealing with zoning and code, but like, there's still gotta be bills out there. Now, the letter that that the board received says, as you know, it recently came to our attention that many invoices related to zoning and code services in Union Township have gone unpaid over the past calendar year or so. I cannot explain how this occurred. We have researched the situation on our end, and it appears that we can say with confidence that the invoices were sent out to the township. A year or so. Like, and I really don't understand the first part of the first sentence. As you know, it's recently come to our attention. Now, as you know, I didn't know. I don't know who he was talking to. It says the Board of Supervisors, but I wasn't somebody that knew. I was looking at last year's profit and loss, and hey, $21,000 in costs of getting $24,000 in permits would be about right, because you also have a lot of money on the Sweat Law Firm bill that is sectioned for zoning and code issues, taking people to the magistrate. Now, it's to still have $61,566.42. Am I correct that residents also write a separate check to Harshman when they get permits?
Only for building permits.
Only for building permits.
Correct.
It just, something doesn't add up to me. And I know Mr. Palermo is not here anymore to ask, but something just doesn't add up that we've only paid him, as of June, zoning contracted services, $142. There must be still bills out there.
If I can add a little bit, I missed a little bit of the conversation. I used the restroom, I apologize. But since I came on, I can't speak for what happened previous, but since I came on, when I started part-time and then even more when full-time, a big part of my contract negotiations, or part of my contract, was that I would take a little bit of that off of Harshman. So instead of stuff, complaints about code enforcement stuff, permits, applications, zoning, grading, building, all of those things go through me first and I vet them. So that takes a lot of the hours off of Harshman. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but taking pictures, the first round of pictures that Harshman would do, we started doing in office. So a lot of that began to change when I was part-time in August, and last August, and then has only accelerate from there. So I'm not sure if that's part of what you're seeing, but that was the goal.
I'm concerned with the fact that it's loose with money. I mean, I've said this with the attorney bills that were from last year. I mean, we are in October paying zoning and code enforcement bills that are a year or so old. I look back and some of them were all the way back to June of 2020. It's very concerning that we are still paying bills that are over a year old, a year and a half old. And it seems like every time I look at a bill pay, I'm looking at bills that are over a year old. Now, I'm concerned too because I believe the law says that if these bills were here at this township last year, before I was on this board, I can't vote on them. Now, if they came in since I've been on this board, I can vote on them if I can understand them. Now, I don't know if these bills were here prior to me being on the board and they just didn't get paid, or were they not here prior to me being on the board? I also question whether or not if they were delivered to this township, that they should be in our audit. If they were known bills last year, they should be in the 2021 audit.
Rick, look like you were gonna speak.
These bills were brought to my attention several months ago. And I do see the dates on them that are old. I contacted Frank Palermo because I believed $10,000 of these were paid, which is the check that Bobby's talking about that Harshman never got. I had Frank look at them, Bobby look at them. These are bills that we do owe Harshman. To make a statement that we're holding bills is wrong. Harshman made a mistake by not rebilling us. We made a mistake by not paying him. If he would have rebilled us monthly, we would have a bill for it. Jamie acknowledged, and that's why he says, as you're aware, he was just brought to attention of this. He wasn't aware of it. We got into it. These are legitimate bills. They need paid.
So he wasn't aware of it, but you were aware of it a couple months ago. But the board wasn't aware of it. And I believe that the $10,000 in uncleared checks was because I mentioned it at a meeting when we were dealing with the fire hydrants. I mentioned how many
No,
uncleared
I have to
cash
interrupt
checks
you.
there
That's
was
not
sitting
right.
on them.
There was a $10,000 check for this.
Yeah, and I mentioned it when we were looking at the uncashed checks from the water company. The water company also didn't mail their bills, but there was a bunch of uncashed checks that were written to the water company that apparently the water company didn't get either. And now Harshman didn't get a check that was sitting there on the accounts as uncleared.
It's taken out of the balance of the bank though. It's accounted for.
So what year do these bills come out of? What year do they come out of last year's bill? Because this is in the same major category as EMS and fire hydrants. That major category took a hit on the fire hydrant overdue bills, and now it's taking a hit on the zoning and code enforcement overdue bills. And there's not gonna be any money left for serums.
So I have a comment, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
My comment is this, I mean, I think this happens in government, and I'm gonna explain why.
Better read your code.
So,
Mm.
excuse me, I'm gonna ask everyone to please stop while we're legislating. Please stop disrupting the public meeting. So I have here, and this is, again, it's not a real criticism, I understand it. I have a minutes from a Union Township